Page 20. Plant, that's called coca, with its purified derivative, cocaine, vibrates on extremely high, concentrated frequency, and it has its own qualities. Now, before we go ahead, exploring the actual reality of a fusion of two energy fields, such as coca plant and human body, I think it is necessary, at this time, to review, briefly, in your mind, all information that you have so far received. The reason behind it is that, I need to know, that clear rapport is established between us, and by now, we speak the same language. I want you to understand that I am just like you, entering the age of Aquarius, New Age as it became known in Western Hemisphere of planet Earth, and as everyone else involved in its development or unveiling, I also have infinitely more questions than answers. When, for instance, spiritual teachers are explaining the process of meditation, it was always very difficult for me to draw a line between real and imaginary. When does creative visualization ends and you actually begin receiving information from other dimensions, or if we take channeling, or out-of-body experience, or clairvoyance, or any of this phenomenon that is beginning to get more and more recognition, as the New Age progresses, what does it really feel like to experience it? Is it only subliminal, and we will forever wonder if it is only the intricate workings of our minds, or science will, after all, acknowledge the fact, and with support from the government, which people like you and me elect, will begin research into this area. And will, hopefully, develop such instruments that will enable us to see and measure what so far was only guesses or complete trust into those who claim to have a first-hand experience and knowledge. My hope is to bring to your understanding, as close as possible, that, which is familiar to us, our material world, and that, which we can't touch, weigh, see, or measure, and as such, have no physical proof, but only through our faith, the other dimension, spiritual world. I don't think there is anything as important as spiritual development. This is the area where all the answers are awaiting our questions. Most fundamental answers, our origin and the reason for us being here. So, if this honest testimonial will contribute, in some small way, to an overall transformation of humanity into a more positive one, then my life was not wasted in constant struggle for survival. What happened to me in reality and what I have learned in theory, supports each other. There are absolutely no contradictions, but, my God! How shocking is the realization of that. When cocaine, with its potent and, at the same time, anesthetizing and, if I may add, somewhat loving quality and high-frequency energy field enters energy field of a human body, it increases its frequencies of vibration and changes its quality. Now, within an energy field of a human body which could be envisioned as a luminous egg, there are many different biological mechanisms, each representing its own energy field with its own qualities and frequencies of vibration. For example, our pulse, which is approximately 70 to 90 beats per minute, we breathe, which represents another frequency of vibration, our glands, pineal, pituitary, thyroid, adrenal and many more, produce fluids on specified frequencies, they contract and expand, cerebrospinal fluid, which is our brain's waterbed, that has many functions from shock absorber to lubricant to supplier of necessary vitamins, pulsate on its own frequencies. Page 21. It's produced by a gland, that vibrates on a frequency, that is somewhere between heartbeat and breathing. Altogether, there are about 15 different pulses, so far, detected by science, each representing a biological machine, carrying its own specific duties. Then each molecule and atom representing their own micro-energy fields and are vibrating on specific frequencies. This view might help you visualize that we are not at all as material and solid as we know ourselves to be. On the contrary, there is nothing solid about our biological vehicle. We are, in essence, a vortex of energy fields, joined together by the thought. If we could move our attention from its focal point, we will dematerialize. Carlos Castaneda would be a definite choice in exploring this point further. However, our plan is not to explore all the intricacies of our creation, but to concentrate on one specific issue, which is to lay a logical ground for our science to establish an existence of a negative entity within our body's energy field. Or, to put it simply, scientifically prove the existence of devil, so we could get rid of it. Negative entity vibrates on a much lower frequency than the ones that are detectable in our dimension. But, when environment is drastically altered, it loses camouflage. One of these drastic measures could be an introduction of an energy field with a very high frequency of vibrations. I stumbled upon cocaine. There must be other methods. The best defense of negative entity is total invisibility. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world that he does not exist. These are not my words, but they are so true. It is capable of manipulating our thought processor, without detection, by manipulation of strategic glands. Could that be done through that electric spark that I have seen in a snake's mouth? It might explain the meaning of the word confusion. Con works through fusion. When cocaine is introduced into our energy field, it increases frequencies of vibration of the whole energy field. Negative entity, in losing its camouflage, desperately tries to protect itself. This is when paranoia sets in. If you remember when I said that I heard my mother knocking on the door and calling my name, to me it was as if a tape recorder inside my head was playing selected recordings of my mother's voice. The distance and volume were perfect. Everyone, as a matter of fact, had cocaine paranoia, without exception, and everyone had reported identical principles. What I have heard was that, my friend let my mother inside my lab. What could be worse? My friend's betrayal and my mother will, obviously, never understand the reasons behind the experiment. I could feel that ambulance and police will arrive momentarily. Imagine my fear, jail for possession and, with leniency, at best, psychiatric asylum. Everyone has identical experiences, with one difference: all experiences are individualized. No one else will hear my mother calling me, it won't bother them, and, even if it will, they don't have her voice recorded, so paranoia is a universally accepted fact. But, when all else fails, and you persistently continue with experiment, especially as in my case with only one purpose in mind, paranoia disappears. This is where drug addicts would fall asleep. They can't get high anymore, vibrations would stabilize, they would dream of getting the next hit, but they will never be able to quench their thirst. This is the way negative punishes the ones nearing its domain. Our body is designed in a way that it will reject anything alien, be it a piece of wood stuck in your finger or bacteria. Your body attacks it and will try to push it out. And that was precisely what had happened. Page 22. When negative entity lost its disguise and was noticed by my body, it was pushed down. The fight for survival of negative entity, which only wanted to stay in my body at all costs, stopped being mental. It became very physical. It clenched to my body from inside, with all its power, but it temporarily lost its control over my mental faculties. My channels opened up, and for the first time in my life I experienced that magical moment of truth being revealed to me. It became clear to me then, that I, indeed, was playing with the devil. What you have to understand, is that, this is not a science fiction, this is a true account of events that took place, and I have physical proof. We, all of us, without exceptions, are controlled by, what is known as devil. It may sound crazy to you, but this is exactly how it operates. If the negative entity doesn't want you to wake up to this realization. It did not enter my body because of my wrongdoings or because of cocaine. Cocaine helped me see what is otherwise unseen. Neither I nor Kodak imagined it. It is as real, as me and you, and it does everything that it can to keep its disguise, so it could continue manipulating us into misery. All crime, all, or most, of our sicknesses, war between nations or within nations, hate, fear and overall unhappiness, is a direct product of negative entities. There are as many of them as there are people on planet Earth, and the truth is, we are all suffering to some extent, some more than others. The natural question, do we want to do anything about it? Or do we want to continue living in ignorance? Doesn't this, at least, raise a little curiosity to warrant some research? I am neither capable nor scientifically inclined to prove or disprove my case. All I am doing is reporting as accurately as I can, but, if enough interest is raised and scientists will agree to give it an honest try, can you imagine what could be the result? Many of you may say that I am trying to create an ultimate scapegoat. Well, it would be something, if it's proven to exist, wouldn't it? All those people in jail all over the world, that don't know why they did it, whatever it may be, or, which is even worse, for the sake of their sanity, are trying to justify to themselves that, what they did, was the right thing to do, or the ones with enough intuitiveness that say devil made me do it. I don't want to wander away into the areas of what-ifs. Anyone, no matter where they are in life, could probably apply this theory to their particular situation. Rich or poor, sick or healthy, doesn't matter. I am sure you will agree that you'll be a lot better off without the constant presence of this highly developed, negative entity that's called the devil. And it's easy. It, the negative entity, wants to keep you blind, or asleep. But if you have the strength to overpower your own ignorance, and to realize its existence, it will inevitably lose. We cannot destroy it, and we don't want to do that. After all, it is of God and there is a reason for its existence. So it will transmigrate to where it is needed. Just imagine yourselves without aberrations, cleansed and glowing of happiness. If this is to be a result, don't you agree that, no matter what actions you take, it will be well worth it? Page 23. Let's go back now to energies and vibrations. My hope is that, by now, this concept is understood and more or less comprehended. We are a luminous egg of energy, that vibrates on specific frequency. It was compared to a fan, that, while not rotating is visible, but the faster it rotates the less visible it becomes. Energy field of the higher self vibrates on very high frequencies. It is, of course, a lot more complicated than this, as has been mentioned before. Each energy field, also, has its distinctive qualities. Those qualities are the area where science has to take a long and careful look. These qualities of vibration were not acknowledged yet. Take, for example, electricity, with its electromagnetic energy field, and compare it with piezoelectricity, generated by quartz crystal. Vibrations could be brought up to identical frequency, but the quality would vary. The same could be said about vegetable or plant kingdom. If cocaine vibrates on a very high frequency, opium, with its derivative heroin, on the other hand, vibrates on a lower frequency, and qualities of energy fields are also distinctly different. So, if one increases frequencies of an overall human energy field, the other subsequently decreases it. Let's take that assumption a little further and analyze what happens with people after consuming alcohol, which belongs to low vibration frequency. We can't scientifically measure all of the effects, only the quantity of what was consumed by taking a blood sample, so we will just analyze it on a surface, and what better way to do it than by simply looking at behavior. I have yet to meet a person who wasn't sorry or guilty the morning after. Results range from embarrassment in lighter cases to tragedy in more severe ones. Wouldn't this theory of negative entity be the ultimate explanation? It is my opinion that alcohol is far more dangerous than cocaine. Crime, under influence of cocaine, is only committed by those who can't afford the habit and only after the affect is gone. It is absolutely impossible to do anything even slightly dangerous while it is in your system. I want you to understand, I am not advocating the use of cocaine. On the contrary, in my opinion, this is the most dangerous substance, which is the main reason why I am revealing this information. I am trying to make you see that on a spiritual level, consequences are dangerously unpredictable and experimentation without the help of science is nothing short of deadly. But, I am, at the same time, not talking about just science. People that would be needed in this area have to be open-minded, humble, with understanding that we are first and foremost spiritual beings, that are going through material experience and not the other way around as it stands now with mainstream science. If we are to look for answers, maybe the time has come for science to admit that it has, finally, run out of answers in the world of matter and has to start listening to millions who are tuning themselves to higher realms. Some of you may find this all absurd. I could almost sense the criticism that would arise if this information is ever to become public. After all, what happened to me was a result of an experiment that was only possible in conjunction with cocaine, and in our society everything and everyone associated with this substance are considered to be dangerous and criminal. Page 24. The reason for lack of understanding is the lack of research. Throughout centuries all our arsenal of power was aimed at technological development. Through technology we thought we will find comfort and happiness. Our spiritual nature, as a result, was completely ignored. What we have now is a dog-eats-dog world, constant fight for more power, which translates into more and more dangerous environment on our planet. We completely ignore the fact that first and foremost we are spiritual beings. We cry when our loved ones die and we ourselves fear death, even though nobody has escaped it yet. Throughout our lives, all we do is try to hide from this realization. We hide ourselves in more entertainment, be it sports, movies, theater, fiction, drugs or alcohol, or endless pursuit for money, and the more we get the more we seem to want, thinking that it will bring us serenity. We try to hold on to life for as long as we can. Science has succeeded in extending lifespan, from an average of 45 years centuries ago, to an average of about 80 years now. They are trying to extend it even longer, which is an issue in itself. And all that's been accomplished is prolonged suffering and not happiness. Without understanding of our true nature, without realization of our spirituality, there can never be happiness. After all, spiritual world is just another plane of existence, and if we cannot touch it, it doesn't mean that it does not exist, and the reason why we can't touch it is because for millennium we were looking the wrong way, and now thanks to incredible technological progress we are a great deal less happy than we were 2,000 years ago, in biblical times. Back then, our planet had no fear of losing ozone layer. There were no Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Terrorism were non-existent. People lived simpler lives, but, I can bet you, they were a lot more content or happy, than in today's, in quotes, civilized world. Somewhere, back then, we went the wrong way, and instead of being the most evolved, united, loved and loving species on Earth, we turned into the most dangerous and most feared by the planet and by each other. Can't you see that life, be it 45 or 80, or even 200 years in length, is a blink of an eye, in cosmic terms? What can we accomplish by becoming the richest? It will only make the inevitable departure more difficult. And the more you have, the more time you'll spend thinking about this inevitability. Could it make anyone happy? Maybe there were never any alternatives? Well, then, maybe a deeper study into what I have encountered will offer an alternative? What I have seen could be repeated under close examination by professionals. Data received might open up amazing possibilities. It just might provide us with answers that could lead into understanding of our spiritual nature. If physical evidence is what we are after, then, what I have, and some of what I was able to photograph, is very physical, three-dimensional and measurable. Page 25. Remember, during the experiment, when the flash went off all by itself, or when I said that I felt fear every time I would even think of taking a picture, paralyzing fear, well, you may think what you want. But when the big picture formed in my mind and I understood what I was actually dealing with, namely an intelligent entity with far-reaching powers, the range of which is unknown, I also understood that maybe, the negative entity, simply doesn't want any publicity. So, what kind of a predicament have I found myself to be in? It's been over 20 years since I came into a possession of this knowledge. It was definitely no blessing so far. I have not found anybody with whom I could, at least, share this with. I have not seen my friend, that originated all of this in about 5 years. There's some kind of an animosity that grew between us, source and reason unknown. Then there are some sorts of satanic cults that we hear about and, believe me, it scares the hell out of me, literally. The whole thing is not exactly very pleasant. I live all by myself, no family and no close friends. I mean close enough to share something like this with. And, after what I have seen with my own eyes during the experiment and having those pictures, I had no doubts that this, whatever this was, is indeed, inside my body, and it drives me crazy thinking about it. The only thing that keeps me going is a sense of humor. I don't, honestly, know where do I get the nerve, but won't you agree that the whole thing could actually be hilariously funny, if it only was not so pathetic, years of thinking of nothing else, but how to make planet Earth happier place to live on, and, at the same time, myself, being not exactly very happy, to put it mildly. Western world in a present state can be compared to a huge school with a lot of students, but without teachers. Can you imagine this picture? How are we supposed to graduate, and when the teacher does come around we make fun of him, ignore him or crucify him altogether, because he, simply, is not up to our standards and he doesn't want to teach us how to make more money. Our teachers are our presidents and governments, and look at them, they don't even know how to live with each other peacefully, never mind being happy. Whoever is more powerful controls others. We are being taught how to live our lives by people who don't know themselves. Blind leads blind. If you want my opinion, the qualities to look for in a teacher should be, first and most important, right understanding of cosmological or spiritual concept. Secondly, it will be very helpful if he or she had an actual experience that had led them into a first-hand knowledge of reality of another planes of existence. Those experiences may range from out-of-body to a near-death experience or clairvoyance and anything in between. My belief is that, if a person actually lived through any of the spiritual experiences and has enough knowledge to understand and to explain to others the reality of what he or she experienced, then the teachings would be more accurate. Page 26. It is like the saying goes, one picture worth 1,000 words. If you had the luck of feeling or seeing for yourself that you are not a leather bag of bones, but an amazing spiritual being, there is nothing in the world that will make you forget it. One experience is, usually, enough to change the way you live your life forever. And I find that those people are more eager to share and to teach everything that they know, and money to them is a secondary issue at best. There are many books on spiritual development going back from ancient Vedas, which are the oldest record of human achievements, to today's New Age literature. Some easier to comprehend than others. Some of them provide us with teachings and systems of gradual development. The underlying conditions in all teachings are devotion, dedication, concentration, focus and patience. What that, basically, means, is that, in the beginning you have to put aside a minimum of a few hours per day, for reading and actual practice of mind discipline without seeing or understanding the reason. And that becomes exceedingly difficult during the practice of meditation, considering demands that Western society has placed upon you, from the time of your maturity. 99.9% of all Western world population lacks mental discipline. You can try a little exercise to see for yourself if you belong to the statistics. Close your eyes and concentrate on nothingness, see how many thoughts will enter your mind, get rid of them and go back to nothing. Now, try not to think of, let's say, pink flamingo. Put an alarm clock on 15 minutes, when ready, and count how many times Pink Flamingo will return. That is, if it ever leaves your mind while you're concentrating on nothingness. If, out of 15 minutes, it never entered your mind, congratulations, you have successfully solved the first problem that is given in a first grade of a spiritual school, that could be compared with first grade of high school. Clairvoyance, clairaudience, telepathy, astral projection, teleportation, levitation, invisibility, weightlessness, which enables walking on water or air, and many other disciplines are college material. Transcendence, ascension, is a highest university on earth, by completion of which you are not required to incarnate again, unless on your own accord. Each step you complete in this, yet, unestablished sequence of schooling, will make you wiser, happier, better, and with each step it becomes clearer and easier. Compare this with the system of schooling we have now and you will have to admit that the advantages of higher teachings are, rather obvious. You may become the highest paid professional or a scientist, that is in love with what you are doing, but you will never escape the suffering that the material world has to offer, be it sickness, loss of loved ones, or the ultimate unknowable, fear of death. And this only happens in most fortunate cases. These are the inevitabilities of the material world, and I have not even begun to touch the iceberg of human miseries, but because of the course that our civilization has taken many centuries ago, we can't quite see the way that we can change this. And isn't it interesting that, even after thousands of years, we still can't get used to suffering, we still see it as something unnatural, something that shouldn't be. Why is that? Could that be because somewhere deep in your memories you know that you shouldn't be suffering? Otherwise, don't you think that through the process of evolution a mechanism would have been designed within us, to make us, not only tolerate, but even look forward to pain and suffering, if we are incapable of getting rid of it? Page 27. After all, evolution has been famous for even more miraculous metamorphosis. Yet, we still get hurt, we fear, and we suffer. We are talking about mental pain, of course. Physical is, often, necessary as a form of protection. Or, could it be, because of a greater reason? It's been said that pain is the biggest teacher. Maybe it is designed in such a way that, because of constant suffering, we will eventually start looking for solutions. We are, right now, at a point in our history where technology is beginning to get out of control. We already witnessed some disasters such as atomic bombs or unplanned catastrophes as nuclear stations melt down. Such man-made devastation surpass any natural disaster. The worst disaster of all being pollution, and we seem to be doing that unconsciously, as though there is no choice. We methodically poison ourselves. Only 50 years ago it was not dangerous to be outside on a sunny day. Today, because of the decrease of the ozone layer, it is. And where has all this technology got us? Are we any better or happier? Of course, we are a lot more powerful, that's for sure, so we can huff and puff and scare the hell out of ourselves. We've got enough power to destroy our planet, with over 7 billion people on it 100 times over. I don't really want to go on with this is really a very depressing subject, but I think you've got the picture. So, what does it mean? Are we all insane? It's easy to see that our beautiful planet Earth is experiencing serious management crises. You don't have to be a political wizard to realize that whoever is in power right now is only looking for more power, but not a working solution to let everyone be. Maybe they just don't know how. Well, if anyone is listening, there is a solution. It is a rather long-range solution, but a solution nevertheless. It should simply start by introducing spiritual sciences into a high school program. I am sure there will be enough interested parents to see their children developing, for a change, in a right direction, to fill up a few classrooms. After all, those children will grow up to be the first happy beings of the Western world. When the knowledge of such programs will spread throughout the world, it would become reasonable to believe that the Western world is ready and willing to take the path of peace. No amount of disarmament or political negotiations will ever come close to what that movement has to offer. Of course, it won't immediately solve all the world problems, but it is a missing link in the formula that, once solved, will lead to peace and happiness on planet Earth. If you were given a choice of being either rich or happy, what would it be? In our society, for some weird reason, those two words became interchangeable, but if you stop and think about it, you will see that all that money could buy is a temporary escape from reality through indulgence and temptations. No, being rich does not automatically mean being happy, and if you chose happiness, how are you going to obtain it? Or, let me ask you, what do you think happiness is? You may find it difficult to believe, but it is easier to become rich than be happy. Page 28. Kings and queens, princess and princesses, dealers and wheelers, and all other leaders of our society, every now and then spotlighted by the media in their times of trouble. Thanks to the freedom of press, we know for a fact that even the most powerful ones are not immune to misery, pain and suffering. And in many cases it could even be said that it works in reverse, meaning that the richer you are, the stronger there is a negative force that works against you. Howard Hughes was the richest man in America. His fortune was estimated at $20 million. Back in his time it was an unimaginable amount. He was a brilliant inventor and all-around intellectual and a highly intelligent man. What could explain his decline into a subhuman that he became in the last years of his life? His story is well known all around the world, so I am not going to repeat it, but, let me just say that he was far from exception. I will go as far as to say that this is rather a rule. Maybe not as extreme and shocking, as in Howard Hughes' case, but almost without exception every fortune known to mankind has been linked with tragedy of one form or another, be it insanity, suicide, addiction, accident etc. Usually brought up upon a victim from within, or by him, herself. There are as many negative entities, as there are human beings on our planet. They, as humans, vary in shapes, forms, characters, strengths etc. All negative entities, also as humans, have their own karma, destiny, and goals to accomplish. In other words, they too are going through their own process of development. Please, don't get me wrong. I am not trying to be the devil's advocate, literally, on the contrary, I am here to expose it and, once exposed, the negative will have nowhere to hide. At this point you are maybe thinking that I am trying to play God or, even better, that all of this is nothing more than a mental delusion of a drug addict, desperately looking for an excuse. Well, first of all, I am not looking for an excuse, I have absolutely nothing to be ashamed of, and secondly, remember, in the beginning I mentioned that in the process of digesting this information you may encounter certain discomfort, be it mental or physical. Mentally, this concept may seem to you as an oversimplification of an ancient theology, and on a physical level you may feel all kinds of revolt. If you can only imagine what I had to go through putting it all together. I have absolutely no funds, I was never offered any kind of advance, there are no agents or publishers who expressed any kind of interest, for a simple reason, I never looked for one. The only reason I have, is an incredible urge to make facts, that were revealed to me, known and eventually tested by scientists. I have theoretical probability and physical evidence that cannot be just ignored. I believe that practical knowledge that human race is being controlled and manipulated by subliminal, but very real negative force or dark brotherhood is of paramount importance. I don't want, at this point, to get into all the minor details and application of this practical knowledge. It would just be enough to think, where would all the prisoners be, if they would not be driven by that force into a predicament that they are in now, to appreciate the magnitude of such undertaking. However, this is a drastic example, and this force works in a much more sophisticated way. Prison for criminals is a very simple victory, solitary confinement, for instance, while being free, will provide with a lot more lucrative playground for negative entity to draw pleasure. Page 29. To a devil everything is in exact reverse. When you suffer, it rejoices, and when you are happy, it suffers. You can apply this to your own specific situations. So, after all that's been said, don't you think it would be wise, to say the least, to stop being so stupid and ignorant and spend a little time, and maybe even money, into our inner research? This is what we use for our outer research, aren't we? And, if your thought processor, your intuition, emotions, your feelings are under constant control by negative force or dark brotherhood, which directly impacts your behavior, your decisions, and your actions, wouldn't you say, that it would reflect on the way that our destiny is taking us? I am talking about all of our science, be it medical, technological, agricultural, our space exploration. Can you imagine what would happen? Well, you are absolutely correct. We would wind up in an exact mess that we are in right now. Look at what's happening to all of our humanity. Our biggest idol is money, and we sacrifice everything to get it. There is a saying, if money can't buy you happiness, then you don't know where to shop. No, money can't buy you happiness. They could provide you with temporary escape from reality, very temporary, say 20 to 40 years of continuous indulgence in material luxuries. More house, more car, more sex, more, bigger, better, but it has also been noted by many including Albert Einstein, that time flies when you have fun, although Einstein's interpretation of it sounds somewhat more scientific. He said that time, as a dimension, has a specific quality. Under certain conditions it can shrink or expand, and actually all you have to do, to prove that scientific conclusion to your satisfaction, is to think back to the time when you were 13 or 14 years old. Didn't it seem that your that 18th birthday will never come? Well, I don't know about you, but my 25th birthday was yesterday, and today I'm 65. I don't want to get too far off the track with this time thing, but I want you to realize how limited our existence really is, if you think about it in three-dimensional terms, and especially if you are planning to waste it in external stimulants. There is a story about a great tycoon that offered half of his fortune to a psychic, if he could only tell him who he is going to be in his next life, so he could deposit money into a bank account bearing that name. Of course this deal never came through. You only need money in this material plane, and you can't take them with you. So, what good are they, really? And people spend lives trying to accumulate more and more of them. This is probably the worst addiction of all. Inner development is a reason behind your life, and you cannot buy it, and it's the only thing that you will take with you when you depart. Nothing else. So, maybe, it's the opposite. Maybe you are playing Russian roulette when you are throwing this philosophy away. Just imagine rotating in this temporary existence endlessly, losing, gaining, and ultimately suffering. Don't you want to escape from this vicious cycle, where, even when you are at your happiest moment in your life, in the back of your mind a reminder keeps flashing, temporary, very temporary? I also don't want to get you depressed. On the contrary, if you understood what I was talking about, or better yet, if you feel that it makes sense to you, and after research and practical application, it may be proven to become factual, then you will also understand that our vicious cycle might soon be stopped. Page 30. We will enter a new era in which happiness will be a foundation, something that will be taken for granted. Our development will move into a new direction, more fascinating than you could ever imagine in your wildest dreams. I can guarantee you one thing for sure: contact with other civilizations will never be successfully accomplished until we free ourselves from all negative. Be honest with yourself. Who, in their right, highly developed, intellectual mind, would ever want to meet an earthling, much less a politician in power? Not only would it be highly dangerous, but also incredibly unproductive. What in the world could they possibly learn from us? So, They are patiently awaiting for humans of planet Earth to sober up, wake up or, if all else fails, destroy each other, slowly, environmentally, or quickly, through the act of mindless war over who gets what. The choice is always ours. Just look at our world through the eyes of uninformed intelligence. The easiest way would be to tune into our television stations. After all, there is not one home that doesn't have a television set, and it is the only unit that supplies us with a constant flow of information. And what do we love to watch most? Sex and violence. Every evening someone is being murdered, raped, shot at, hanged, etc., and the more violent it gets, the more we love to watch it, and it is all happening in your own living room. This is exactly how the negative entities, Dark Brotherhood, is controlling you. It is not you, it is that negative entity, that is living inside each and every one of us, that loves to watch pain, suffering, violence, blood, etc. It draws energy from it, as we draw pleasure out of love and happiness. Well, let me tell you, there is less and less of love and happiness on television screens today. Movies like The Sounds of Music, for instance, are the things of the past, and I just cannot think of another happy movie. Well, there are of course comedies, when we usually laugh at misfortunes of others. And it is not me, but statistic that shows, that the more there is sex and violence, the more of us, in numbers, are tuned in to watch it. So, you tell me who is in control here? There is another interesting statistic that shows that right after the Second World War, planet Earth experienced its happiest times in a long while, hence the baby boomers generation. Could that be that, this war was so devastating in terms of pain, suffering and death that, like after a big meal, negative power sort of went to sleep, or is that a coincidence? Crime rate was at its all-time lowest, almost none, can you believe that? Movies were all about love, families and happiness in general. Remember Happy Days, Leave It to Beaver, Lucille Ball Show, and so on. Well, I don't, I was not here. I was in Russia and I was born in 1950, so, even though my memory recall goes back to about 1953 or so, my age of maturity, or, more precisely, the age of decision-making, did not begin until about the time of Beatles in mid-60th. And, my God, it scares me to remember what decisions they were. There was not a day without a fight. I grew up in one of the scariest part of my town, and most of my friends spent some time in prison, some of them a very long time, because some of those fights often escalated to murder. I was, probably, lucky that I wound up in the Russian Navy, which took me right out of the streets at the most dangerous age. Page 31. I was 18 then. Going back to the theory of Dark Brotherhood, try to look at teenagers. My strong opinion is that this is the most difficult time in life for one reason: at that time we don't have enough intellect, intelligence or positive strengths to counteract negative force, with its luring temptations. That will, probably, explain why crimes committed by teenagers are often a lot more horrific than those committed by adults. When, in an adult situation, crime is usually committed for a reason, be it greed, anger, jealousy or any other, however wrong, but a reason. In teenagers, reason is not a necessity. Sadistic outbursts reported from children as early as 5 years of age. All you have to do is to watch a group of kids destroying a bird's nest, or a 5-year-old going out of his way to kill an ant, or dismember some other living insect, and almost drool with pleasure. So ask yourself, where does all that sadism comes from? And these are not exceptions. These are rules. We are created in the image of God. So what went wrong in the mind of a 5-year-old child? Where do those sadistic outbursts come from? There, of course, may be very complicated scientific, psychological or psychiatric reasons. There seems to be an all-consuming preoccupation with complications. It is, as if, the more complicated the matter becomes, the more we trust it, and if such prominent fame as Sigmund Freud proclaimed that he found a solution, ignoring the fact that he was a cocaine addict all of his life, The whole human race believes it so completely that we never even questioned it, even it never doesn't do any good. Don't get me wrong, we love psychiatrists, and we pay them handsomely for trying to cure us with century-old techniques. So what, that nobody gets cured? At least we know that we have a psychiatric problem, and that, somehow, makes it okay. As long as we can label the reason behind our wrongdoing, be it simple laziness or addiction or even murder and everything in between, we feel safe. Our courts accept insanity plea, even if it was temporary. But what is insanity? Why is it that there is always harm when your faculties temporarily fail to obey your command? I am not talking about harm to yourself, which also is not uncommon. What I am asking is, where does that sadistic drive comes from when one human being is killing another? All sexual perversions, from rape to child molestation, and why is it so true that man is his own worst enemy? My only reason for revealing this information is to expose negative force, or a dark brotherhood, and once exposed, together, we have to find a way to unplug human race from this evil force. I believe that I provided enough to at least ask yourself what, if. Page 32. To me there is no such question. I know for a fact, that there is a living beast, inside each and every one of us. Under certain conditions, it becomes visible. To provide those conditions, we don't need a Pentagon budget, but, once exposed, it could prove to be a lot more helpful. I would even say, that, once we learn the truth, we will never need Pentagon. Military, together with all the other human insanity, will become obsolete once and for all.